Back when I was in college, there was an old dormitory that was empty and locked up. The first floor windows were covered up with thick black curtains and the doors had chains and padlocks on them. Well, my second year of school I got my EMT certification and started working for the Campus M squad. That was easily my coolest job ever, and there were perks other students couldn't get. One of those were keys for everything. So obviously we used those keys to go everywhere. Most places were pretty boring. My now best friend, who was the other EMT I worked with, decided to make the old dorm our hangout place. We would sneak in with friends and drink there on the weekends or nights where we didn't have class. We usually stayed on the first floor on just one wing of the dorm, the one closest to the back entrance. We didn't stray because the place was dirty and had cobwebs. So one night we were drinking in the one room we set up with tables and chairs that we seized. We were all together. Nobody was missing when somebody very close to our room and very loudly screamed, "WHO, the fuck is there?" To which one of us drunkenly responded, "Who the fuck do you think it is?" A very confused voice responded back, "You're not coming with me then, John?" They sounded like they were walking away from us towards the center of the building, away from the stairwell. Incidentally, none of us were named John. A few minutes later we could hear on the floor above us, a very old building floor that's super thick, a rumbling sound that kind of shook the walls. The rumbling stopped right above us with a giant crash. Shit officially just got creepy. We all run up the stairs and make our way to the hallway above the one we were hanging out at. Right at where our room would be on the first floor was a giant filing cabinet on wheels. It was just there. Nobody else was there. You could see the wheel tracks on the floor because it was dusty as shit. But there were no other footprints around besides our own. We all fucking bolted without getting our stuff. No stopping to get our booze, or turning off our radio, or turning off our battery-powered lantern. So we obviously have to back and get our shit. We waited a few days. A friend of mine and I went one evening to go get it. First we go to the window and see if we can see our stuff in there. My friend looks in. I didn't. He said he thought he saw somebody in the doorway. I thought he was acting retarded because of what happened the other night. We sneak in and make it to the room and get our shit. Somewhere down in towards the center of the building we hear a door shut. It's completely dark that way. We hear a door close or open and we don't wait to find out what the fuck that's about. So I'm not a person who believes in supernatural stuff, and the same goes for my friends. We decide that we need to figure out what the hell is going on with this building. So about 6 of us devise a pretty easy plan to go about with. We circle the building one night and check all the doors and windows to make sure they were all locked up. Then we went to our usual entrance. Left 2 people on the inside of it to make sure nobody came in or out. Then the rest started going from dorm room to dorm room checking to make sure nobody else was there. We'd go, hello, and obviously get no response. We make it through our hallway we hang out at and our tensions ease up. One of the people at the outside door moves up to where we stopped and we go to the second floor where the filing cabinet was. Because it's back at the original place with the wheel tracks and no fucking footprints. Tension in the group rise. We start doing the whole hello and no response thing again. We get about halfway through the hall and one of us gets the idea of saying, "Oh come on, it's your friend Johnny." A giant thud below us. Muffled screams from the two we left as lookouts, probably saying something along the lines of, "What the fuck is that?" A giant thud behind us on the same floor. Where nobody could have been because we went through those rooms and we would have noticed somebody else slamming a door right fucking behind us. It turns into a race to get back out the way we came. Past the doors that were just slammed. As we get into our hallway, we can hear doors opening and closing in a way that something was coming toward us from the center of the building again. We get a few hundred yards away before we all stop running and make sure we all made it. We found another place to hang out after that. It's torn down now and a real dome is built over it. Well, once in a while we would notice that the window would get foggy, like when you breathe on a window foggy, but it was always on the hallway side of the window. Like if somebody was looking at us through the glass and watching us. We never put that together until after the Who fleeing and terror incident. Good to bring up old memories like that. I didn't feel like sleeping. I'm not the overly adventurous type, but a friend of mine is, and he told me a similar story a few years ago. So I hope I get the facts straight. He and a few of his friends went to an abandoned mental hospital in our city. They liked to explore abandoned buildings all the time. So it's late one night and there's a field of tall grass leading up to the building. There are obviously no lights on in the building and there's just a creepy aura about it. Two of the big black dudes that came with them stopped at the door and actually refused to go in. So they go down the halls, floor by floor, and there's nothing in any of the rooms. But there is crazed, mindless writing all over the walls in many of them. They finally make it to the top floor and it's nothing but a long, pitch-black hallway with a door at the end of it. They walk down the hall and, being the crazy adventurers they are, decide to see what's inside. However, it's the only door in the building that's locked. Multiple guys pound and kick at the door to try and break it open, but it won't budge. One guy shines a flashlight through the keyhole, or some sort of hole in the door. Can't remember to see what's inside. Nothing, except more crazed writing on the walls that was visible only by the faint light. After failing once again to break the door down, they give up and walk back down the hall. When they get to the end, at the stairwell, they hear the door fling open and slam the wall. It's still pitch black, and the only thing they can see is a huge, shadowy figure in the doorway. Then they hear thumping, slow at first, but the pace quickens. The figure is running towards them. They sprint down the stairs faster than they've ever run before, and all the while they hear just a few flights above them, thump, 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 thump. They make it to the first floor and burst out the door where the two guys are waiting outside. They tell them to run and they all sprint to their van, get in, and pull away. They look out the window and see that huge dark figure still chasing them. When my mom was about 3 years old, my grandma and grandpa moved into an apartment on the 9th floor in downtown Columbus. After they moved in, she didn't have many friends, so she developed an imaginary friend named Kathy. Over the course of a year, her relationship with Kathy was getting out of hand. She didn't want to play with anything or anyone else. My grandma and grandpa took her to counseling and to see psychologists, but they just said it was a normal childhood behavior. She started blaming Kathy for things that got broken, messes that were made, and my grandpa had had enough. My grandpa went out to get a dog to occupy her time with instead of her imaginary friend. So he goes out and gets a German Shepherd pup from the pound and brings it home. When he gets back, my mother is playing in the corner by a window with Kathy. As soon as he walks in, the dog stares straight at my mom and starts barking and snarling. All of the hair on his back is raised and he is ready to attack, and my mom starts screaming, and all of a sudden the dog stops and my mom just starts crying. My grandparents are freaked out at this point and ask my mom what happened, and she says that Kathy fell out of the window. After that she never played with or mentioned Kathy again. Cut to a few months later. They are moving out of the apartment because my grandma, super religious, can't handle what happened. My grandpa talks to the landlord and somehow the story comes up about Kathy. The landlord is shocked and tells him that the tenants before them moved out after their 5-year-old daughter Kathy fell out of the window and died. I'm sure many won't believe this story, but it's 100% true. Even my super religious grandma swears by it to this very day. When I was really little, my parents would let me stay up late on the weekends and watch TV until I fell asleep. I really loved these times and I would stay up later than anybody else just because I could. Well, one night I was almost asleep on the couch when I heard a noise on our front porch. It was the sound of our old-fashioned porch swing moving back and forth. I was a little scared, so I crept toward the bay windows of my living room and peeked out towards the porch. Sitting on my front porch swing was an older woman, probably in her 50s, wearing nothing but a nightgown, covered in blood and holding a huge kitchen knife. I flipped out immediately and ran screaming into my parents' room, but was too terrified to form words. My parents saw that I was upset, but when I finally was able to tell them what I saw, my dad got really angry and told me that it was just a dream and to go back to bed. I refused and kept crying and screaming until he had had enough and snatched my arm and dragged me towards the front door to prove that nothing was there. I kicked and screamed all the way trying to make him stop, but he kept pulling me. Finally we got to the door, he unlocked it, swung it open and said, "See, there's nothing." To this day, I have never seen the look of fear and shock that was on his face when that woman turned and stared at both of us and slowly stood up with the knife. My dad slammed the door shut and got my mom to call the police while he went and got his gun. He went back to the door with a 12 gauge and cracked the door enough to stick the barrel out. He asked her what she was doing and she said, "Somebody killed my husband, but it wasn't me." My dad told her that the police were coming and she freaked out, grabbed the knife and walked away. The police found her 15 minutes later trying to break into one of our neighbors' houses. I never slept in the living room again. I just talked to my mom and she said that they never really found out the whole story, but apparently she was crazy and off her medication. Her and her husband got into a fight and she tried to attack him with a knife but didn't seriously hurt him. When he got her out of the house, she cut herself with a knife, either trying to commit suicide or make it look like her husband did it. The police never talked to us about it, so that's just what they heard from the woman's neighbors. 2. When I was younger, we frequently visited my grandparents around holidays even though we didn't live in the same town. My aunt lived 2 houses down from my grandparents. The lady in the house between was creepy. She was a large woman, over 6 feet. She wore logging chains around her neck, a dress and work boots. The only time I remember seeing her outside was either in her garden in the back or when she was washing the outside of her house, scrubbing the actual building. She did this often. During these times she would yell at us kids and call us all kinds of things. She would tell us the devil would be coming for us. The adults told us to leave her alone and to avoid her. We would run the distance between my aunts and my grandparents because when we passed by she was watching out the windows. It was creepy and we never went alone. One Halloween one of the cousins dared us to trick-or-treat her house. I remember how scared I was, but I didn't want to be a chicken, plus I was going with the group. One of us rang the doorbell and there was a lot of banging noises in the house, suddenly like doors slamming. When she answered the door she had a severed head in her hands and we all went screaming. The adults told us it was a Halloween prop and we knew we shouldn't be bothering her and deserved to be scared. About a month later my parents got a phone call that the lady had tried to kill my aunt while she was bringing in groceries and had my young cousin in her arms. The lady had one of them rope saws and had come up behind my aunt with it. She put it over her head and around her neck and proceeded to saw. My aunt naturally flipped and started kicking the door. My uncle came and beat the lady down with a fire poker. The police investigation revealed that the woman had been digging tunnels under her home which were coming up under my aunt's. My grandparents in another neighbor's house. She had been bringing the dirt up and putting it in the raised beds of the gardens. She also had a shrine of some sort underground which had a few severed heads around it. My aunt survived, by the way, but has a long scar across her neck. In the late 70s, my uncle was studying medicine at the University of Chicago. After a morning class, he decided that he would hitchhike back home to Lincoln Park on the north side instead of pay for a taxi. A man drove up in a Plymouth Satellite and offered my uncle a ride. The man looked normal and seemed friendly, lighthearted even, so my uncle got in the car and they started driving towards Lakeshore Drive. However, once they got there, the man drove south on Lakeshore instead of north, towards Lincoln Park. My uncle told the man he was going the wrong way and to turn around and head north. The man looked at my uncle, put his hand on his knee and said, "No son, you are coming with me," and smiled darkly at him. My uncle froze in panic, and when they hit traffic near the South Shore, he quickly unlocked the passenger door and ran away without looking back. A year or two later, on a cold December day, my uncle was having coffee in a cafe with my future aunt when he caught something on the TV that made his blood run cold. He saw the man that had picked him up from school that day the year before. He had been arrested for the suspected rape and killing of over 20 young men and boys. The man on the television was John Wayne Gacy, and he had removed the door handle off the passenger side door to prevent the men he picked up from escaping.
Ha 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 ha.